Gremlin is the main antagonistic group of the first half of a certain magical index New Testament, formed after the end of World War III, primarily composed of Norse magicians who are even willing to make use of the science side to further their goals. The main objective of Gremlin is to restore the power of their leader, magic god Othinus, so that she will be able to make all their individual dreams come true. In this video, I will explain every member of Gremlin that we know about, starting with the fodders that no one cares about, before talking about the Magic Cabal's heavy hitters. Gremlin is a pretty big cabal with approximately over 100 members, most of whom are unnamed and we know nothing about. Therefore, I'm going to be talking about the ones that are named and we do know some details about, before all you nerds in the comments nitpick the hell out of me. You know who you are. Anyway, let's get started. Also, please excuse my pronunciation of some of these Norse names. I'm trying my best. First up, we have the two members we know least about, Iðunn and Sif. Yeah, we don't actually have any official art of plenty of these lesser known members of Gremlin. Kinda sucks, but I guess you get to see some classical art of some Norse mythology figures. Iðunn is a goddess in Norse mythology associated with apples, fertility, and youth, as she maintains the source of the gods' eternal youth and immortality, while Sif is also a Norse goddess and giantess, meaning you don't want her to step on you unless you have a thing for that, I guess. She is also Thor's second wife, and the mother of Ullr, aka Olorus, who isn't a member of Gremlin. Sif is considered to be a goddess of harvest or fertile land, but not much else is known about her. However, big disclaimer, keep in mind that the Gremlin magicians who borrow the names of gods and creatures from Norse mythology aren't the actual counterparts of them. They are just normal human magicians who happen to borrow the names of the gods for their spells, bringing them closer to the legends they were based on via the magic concept of idol theory. The only exception to this rule in Gremlin is Othinus, who we will save to the end. Iðunn and Sif never make a true physical appearance and are only mentioned by other characters. In New Testament Volume 8, Marian suggests they could oversee the magic ritual to create Odin's spear, the Lance of Gungnir, while Othinus repairs herself from injury. But Othinus rejects this, saying she will remain next to the lance. The other time they are mentioned is New Testament Volume 10, where the 100 or so Gremlin members who went to Egeskov Castle, Denmark, to take revenge upon Othinus for not fulfilling their individual dreams, they are all defeated by the traitor Thor, who again, I will talk about later. Next up is Hel. Not that Hel, this one. The one who had the honor of being given a shout out on Death Battle of all places. In Norse mythology, Hel is the daughter of Loki, and essentially is the goddess of death, who oversees the underworld, which is also named after her. She's also the sister of Fenrir and Jörmungandr, who again, we will discuss later. In New Testament Volume 8, Hel appeared traveling in a small boat in the Pacific Ocean to stop the anti-Gremlin task force ships which were en route to Sargasso, the temporary hideout of Gremlin located in Tokyo Bay. But she was confronted by the Saints Sylvia and Brunhild. Hel seemingly survived this encounter due to her presence in New Testament Volume 10, and she waits with the other Gremlin members at Egeskov Castle, and was beaten up by Thor. Hel uses magic based upon causes of death, where she can analyze a surrounding area to learn about the deaths that occurred in her vicinity. She does this by summoning thousands of floating small candles, with each one representing someone's death in the past. By picking up one of these candles, she can learn about a person's death and then use her magic to somehow replicate the way in which they died as her own attack, but amplified on a much greater scale. One of these attacks involved throwing a knife in the ocean to freeze the water, with a range of around 100 kilometers, which stopped multiple military ships. This death by freezing is inspired by Niflheim, a realm in Norse cosmology which the underworld of Hel overlaps, which acts as the afterlife for those who do not reach Valhalla, since Niflheim is formed entirely of ice and all things cold. Another attack was where she used a death of a man whose head was shoved into an oven to unleash a fire spell. Using a regular revolver, she fired a bullet at one of the ships. While normally the bullet would do nothing, the magic enveloped the ships into flames. Therefore, it appears Hel has to use normal weapons in conjunction with her magic for it to work. Now we have Jörmungandr, named after the world's serpent of Norse mythology, and the brother of Hel and Fenrir. He's called the world serpent because he can apparently wrap himself around the world itself, biting his tail like an Ouroboros. And it's stated, when he stops biting his tail, Ragnarok will begin. There is another prophecy that says that Thor will kill the serpent, but will also die himself by Jörmungandr's poisonous bite. However, Toaru's Jörmungandr isn't a giant snake. He instead appears as a boy and attacked a Russian tactical bomber on its way to fight Gremlin. He was unaffected by the speed of the aircraft and the high altitude wind while standing on its wing. Jörmungandr was however intercepted by the Anglican magician working for Necessarius, Stal Magnus, who summons the fire monster in Akentis. Jörmungandr commented that it is easy for magicians to fly, but just as easy for them to fall. This is likely a reference to St. Peter's interception spell, a common Christian counterspell devised to stop magicians who use magic to fly, which sends them crashing to Earth, based upon the legend of Simon Magus from the New Testament of the Bible. But much to Jörmungandr's surprise, it did not appear that Style used this flight spell, as Jörmungandr inspected one of Style's runes, making the Norse magician theorize how on earth it got up to the plane to begin with, possibly using a tornado to send it to the sky. Style states doing damage to Inakentis is futile, as Jörmungandr laughs, stating he knows Style's location as he fires an attack down to the Sea of Japan below. The fight between the two occurred off screen, but Jörmungandr was present in New Testament Volume 10 with the other members of Gremlin. Jörmungandr's magic is based upon the poisonous breath of the world serpent, where he can launch a lethal purple ping-pong-sized ball. Scary. Now we have Fenrir, named after the giant wolf from Norse mythology and the last of the three siblings I previously discussed. According to legend, Fenrir continued to grow in power as the gods feared him, attempting to bind the monstrous wolf with chains. After this failed, the gods resorted to using Gleipnir, an unbreakable chain, which they tricked Fenrir into wearing by saying it would test its strength. And so Fenrir became bound to a rock and will be released during Ragnarok, where it is said he would vor Odin to death. Again, Toaru Fenrir is not a creature, but a young male magician. He attacked a NORAD base in Alaska, NORAD being the North American Aerospace Defense Command, which was acting as part of the anti-Gremlin forces, and neutralizing this base would hamper their intelligence network. But Fenrir was ambushed by the mercenary magician Oriana Thompson, but he was able to counter her magic with his own spell. Again, we don't see what happens in this fight, but Fenrir appears again in New Testament 10 with the others. Fenrir's magic allows him to manipulate or distort space, where he can swallow up anything in his way, resulting in black cracks appearing after it's used. Based upon the legend of Fenrir eating Odin, the spell functions via the concept of ley lines, invisible magic lines under the Earth's crust, which flow through natural terrain or monuments, and hold a great source of mana. Since rivers and mountains tend to be positioned on ley lines, Fenrir can create a ditch between them which absorbs the surrounding energy by creating rivers or mountains to change the flow of energy in pre-existing lines, therefore distorting space around him. Yeah, that didn't make much sense, but that's how it's explained in the novel. What do you want me to do about it? Next up, we have a name you probably heard of, as here's Loki. No, not Tom Hiddleston, you crazy-ass fangirls. We have Toaru Loki instead. Wait, that's still him? We're this far in the video, and we still don't have any official art of the characters yet? As you may know from popular culture, Loki in Norse mythology is the god of mischief, and is basically the guy who causes trouble for the other gods for the hell of it. See what I did there? Let's see what interesting legends we can talk about with Loki. Well, according to Wikipedia, he was impregnated by the stallion or something. What? Okay, that's too much internet for today. Now, Toaru Loki is not a god, but an elderly male magician who defended a fake Sargasso from William Orwell, aka Aqua of the Back, Knight Leader, and Princess Carissa of Great Britain, supported by other knights. Before Loki could properly introduce himself, one of the knights fired a spiritual item at Loki, known as a Robin Hood, an arrow which guides itself towards its target, with it piercing Loki's neck. The trio walk past Loki's corpse until he suddenly stands up, pulls the arrow out of his neck, and begins talking once again, saying that he has tricked the trio as he and the surroundings are nothing more than an illusion, as he has lured them to a fake Sargasso on the other side of the world from the real place. The illusion of Loki disappears as the fake Sargasso was hit by an explosion, but the British trio survived. Again, Loki appears with the other Gremlin members in New Testament 10, but is assumed to be defeated by Thor along with his comrades. Loki's illusion magic is known as the territory of Vidopnia. The sound of countless flying insects are an indication of the spell working, as what appeared to be Loki's body dissolved into the surrounding fog as he used a wooden doll as a substitute for himself. Vidopnia is a rooster in Norse mythology who sits atop the Norse world tree, Yggdrasil. This territory encases an area in a metaphysical dome that displays fake celestial bodies on it like a planetarium. Loki is then free to create whatever illusions he likes within this dome, even if his real body is not physically within it. Although since Loki uses a wooden doll, it's implied he doesn't need physical substitutes for his illusions to be convincing and not just ghost-like images. Now we are finally onto the members who have actual art. Thank God! Let's explain Cendrillon, who is a bit of a strange member of Gremlin, considering she doesn't really have any ties to Norse mythology, as she is based upon the French version of Cinderella, and I shouldn't have to explain that story to you. Cendrillon and her superior Saronia A, Irivika, were part of the Gremlin forces who had invaded Hawaii alongside mercenaries belonging to an organization known as Trident. They were under the impression that their main objective was to bring down America using Trident, in order to twist the balance between the magic side and the science side, by turning the United States into a theocracy, by working with Ole Blueshake, a businesswoman and media queen with vast influence in the States, who wanted to take government office in America, turning the country into a theocracy in order to protect her country from the magic side, as the USA had nothing to match the strength of the occult, as demonstrated in World War III by Fiamma of the Right, essentially turning the USA into a magic side nation where they would utilize Christian magic from God, with Gremlin acting as the country's advisors. Not a great plan considering Gremlin are pagans, but whatever. The real reason why Gremlin were in Hawaii was to harvest volcanic energy from forcibly erupting Kilauea, Hawaii's largest volcano, with it being used to create the Lance of Gungnir, which would restore Othinus' magic god power back to 100%. But turns out this plan was just all a distraction to Othinus creating Gungnir herself in secret, so the actual plan in Hawaii doesn't matter. You got all that? Back to Cendrillon. Her and Saronia are considered pawns of Gremlin. They were not informed about the Cabal's actual plan to create Gungnir. They were all simply intended as a distraction to cause unrest in Hawaii, while Gremlin could achieve its true objective there. They believe that forcibly erupting Kilauea via an act of terrorism would result in destabilizing the current US government, with it causing the other nearby volcanoes to explode in a chain reaction, causing thousands of deaths from tourists visiting the islands, with the consequence being immense pressure on the US and the science side, providing a platform for Ole Blueshake to take the reins in the aftermath. Cendrillon was positioned to cause chaos at New Honolulu International Airport, as she became an obstacle for Lavinia Birdway's anti-Gremlin group to overcome. This large group included Toma, Misaka, Accelerator, Hamazura, Misaka Worst, Koryoru, amongst others. Cendrillon easily defeated some of Birdway's men with her magic as they attempted to approach her, which made the other members of Birdway's group cautious. Even Accelerator was reluctant to go near her, thinking that her magic could perhaps bypass his vector reflection. Birdway theorized that Cendrillon had adopted the name of Cinderella and applied religious motifs to the fairy tale in order to develop an attack spell. Due to Cendrillon's power to crush bones in her victim's feet, Birdway also assumed that Cendrillon was specifically deployed as a countermeasure to Toma's Imagibreaker located in his right hand. Toma was confronted directly by Cendrillon and managed to pin both him and Misaka to the ground as she prepared her foot-breaking spell. However, Birdway came to the rescue as she broke through the airport with a large truck, crashing into Cendrillon. It then exploded as Birdway dragged her body from the flames. Cendrillon was somehow still alive and was interrogated by Birdway and Accelerator, but things went astray as she managed to render herself unconscious. Birdway pitied Cendrillon in this moment and called her an ambulance. She later reappeared right at the end of the arc as she contacts Marian Slingeneyer, who is a full member of Gremlin, and informs Cendrillon that she had fulfilled her purpose to fail, as she overheard Gremlin's true plan in Hawaii. Out of rage, Cendrillon attacked Marian and Mjolnir, but is defeated and turned into a table, thanks to Marian's magic. Cendrillon is later turned back to normal off-screen by Olorus, with her now wanting revenge on Gremlin. This is where shit gets a bit weird, so brace yourself. Cendrillon devises an unorthodox way to sneak into Academy City by turning herself into cooking ingredients, posting herself to Mugano Shizuri's apartment, and then getting a new body as a lolly. Really, Kamachi? Really? Cendrillon sews herself a new dress and finds Toma and Misaka, with Toma asking Cendrillon to create a brain for the weird witch lady Fraulein Kreutschun to eat, so she doesn't eat anyone else's. Why does this keep getting weirder and weirder out of context? Oh, and Cendrillon misunderstands that Toma killed Marian in the previous arc, and now she feels like she's indebted to him, as Toma makes another fine addition to his harem. She then meets up with Mugano again along with Item, and she goes back to her apartment to prepare the ingredients needed for the brain. Cendrillon creates the brain, which is consumed by Kreutschun, satisfying her appetite as she also shrinks and becomes a lolly. And Cendrillon kinda disappears from the story after this. Well, that was something. Cendrillon uses a spell based on Cinderella's glass slippers. If your feet are smaller than her 22.5cm foot size, the areas between the bones are forcibly widened. If your feet are larger, your toes get severed. That's nasty. This spell can affect multiple people at once, within a 500-meter radius of Cendrillon. She also uses a spell based upon Cinderella's pumpkin carriage, which causes an invisible shockwave from her arm. Cendrillon can also reconstruct her body, can use healing magic, and an invisibility spell, although Cendrillon does have notable weaknesses. When she was defeated by Birdway, the effects of her spell wore off, as Birdway's men no longer had any issues with their feet, meaning the spell does not appear to be permanent. Cendrillon's magic combines her body and the dress she wears, meaning she's incapable of using her magic without her clothes. Typical Kamachi! And she's also unable to use her abilities if there is sunrise or conditions around her related to midnight, just like in the Cinderella story. Next, we have the other lesser member of Gremlin, who led Cendrillon and the Gremlin forces during the Hawaii invasion arc, Saronia A. Irivika. Saronia doesn't seem to be directly inspired by a specific Norse god or fairy tale, unlike her peers. She originally belonged to the Russian Orthodox Church, before defecting to Gremlin after World War III, as Saronia wanted Russia to restart the war against Academy City after their surrender, just like that one Japanese soldier after World War II who wanted to keep fighting. She then wanted to force Academy City to pay reparations for the damage they caused to her country, believing that Gremlin would be the perfect cabal to weaken Academy City and help grow the strength of the magic side once more. With orders from Othinus, Saronia began to influence several important government figures in the United States, including Ole Blueshake, with desires to turn a country into a theocracy, thus making the world's second strongest superpower aligned with the magic side, with hopes to weaken Academy City's newfound dominance over the world. Saronia was the one who controlled Cendrillon from afar while she was being interrogated to stop her leaking information regarding Gremlin's operations. She ordered attacks on Roberto Katse, the President of the United States, and his aide, Rosaline Crackheart, in addition to Kamijo Toma, who is deemed as a significant threat to Gremlin due to his role in ending World War III. Saronia almost became cornered as her location was leaked, but took advantage of an explosion created by the Trident mercenaries working for Gremlin to escape. Saronia also believed she was transporting the trigger device to cause the eruption of Kilauea in Hawaii. But turns out it was with Marian the entire time, as the volcano was forcibly erupted. But much to everyone's surprise, it did not cause a chain reaction or thousands of deaths, as it was secretly intended for a different purpose by the actual members of Gremlin. Saronia manages to escape, but later she is confronted directly by Toma, who defeats her in their fight. Saronia's magic is based upon the legend of the Leshy, a male woodland spirit of Slavic mythology. The Leshy is the ruler of the forest and the king of all animals that live there, who also happens to be a fairy that loves gambling. And so Saronia's spell is linked to plants and a natural environment via an enclave acting as the Leshy's forest. Saronia can use any plant available for her spell, but must prepare an enclave in order for her magic to be used. She needs to establish an environment where oxygen and carbon dioxide is exchanged between plants and Russian animals, with it taking around 3 days to prepare. Or she can create a smaller but less effective enclave if she uses a Russian plant as the base. Once established, Saronia can influence group psychology by controlling the minds of smaller creatures such as reptiles and insects, which then can affect larger organisms such as humans, who are in an enclave by connecting the majority rule of the many smaller creatures to others. Saronia can control the minds of humans by making them touch a plant of the enclave, making them a resident of the forest. However, they must be touching the plant at all times for it to continue working, which is why Saronia orders her victims to keep hold of it as her first immediate command. Saronia can also weaponize the pollen of her enclave, making parts of the body unusable if they come into contact with the pollen, although this manipulates the mind into thinking it is unusable rather than actually affecting the body. Saronia is also trained in martial arts, which she prepared in order to fight Kamijo Toma. Next we have Útgarða-Loki, who is a completely different guy to actual Loki, by the way. He is also named after a figure in Norse mythology, with his name meaning Loki of the Outlands, to distinguish him from Loki the god. Útgarða-Loki in Norse mythology was one of the Jotnar, or a giant, and was also known as Skrymir. He features in a well-known legend in Norse mythology, where Thor, the Norse god Loki, and Thialfi travel to the land of the giants and meet Útgarða-Loki in his castle, as the gods test their worth against the giants. Útgarða-Loki in Index is a Norse magician who specializes in illusion magic and was part of the main Gremlin force that invaded Baggage City during a Natural Selector tournament. Baggage City is a city-state located somewhere in Eastern Europe, which was taken over by the Anti-Academy City Science Guardians, an organization formed from members of Academy City's worldwide institutions, who desired to decentralize Academy City's dominance over advanced science and technology. This occurred after the invasion of Hawaii, where scrutiny was placed upon Academy City's involvement with their presence in a foreign country, believing that Academy City had no right to act directly in order to influence another country, akin to a world police, especially when the institutions exist in countries outside Academy City. Although Academy City's involvement was forced by Birdway, who brought Toma and gang to the island, Aleister Crowley himself did not give any orders to intervene in Hawaii, as Birdway wanted this to happen herself, and knew Aleister would not take any action, as Birdway wanted to lure out the core members of Gremlin who would try to take advantage of the institutions now they had defected from Academy City. And so members of Gremlin were sent to Baggage City during the Natural Selector tournament, a fighting tournament where the Science Guardians hoped to find a superior power which could surpass the Espers of Academy City. Basically, the tournament acted like a giant experiment. Gremlin also wished to use the competitors of the tournament as an experiment to see if they could develop a holistic Esper, which work in the reverse to how normal Espers do, where the macroscopic changes would influence phenomena on a microscopic level, therefore creating an Esper power. Othinus would then use a holistic Esper's power to create Gungnir, or at least that's part of what the decoy plan was to her creating the lance in secret. Academy City send the Kihara family and their military to kill the Science Guardian leadership, but the infamous family of crazy scientists ended up battling a war against the forces of Gremlin. Útgarða-Loki collaborated with Wislan Strainikov, one of the Science Guardian leaders, until the Kiharas attacked, as Útgarða-Loki was placed under the illusions of Kihara Ransu, who creates them using chemicals. Basically Toaru Scarecrow. Útgarða-Loki managed to break free of the illusions, but was beaten to near death by Ransu. Still, Útgarða-Loki had time to place Ransu under his own illusions, while his enemy was torturing Wiceland, which allowed him to smash Ransu's head repeatedly. This was until a certain spiky-haired boy suddenly appeared to ruin the fun. We don't know what happened to Útgarða-Loki after this, as he's never seen again. Útgarða-Loki's illusion magic allows him to transfer the information sent to one of the 5 senses to a different sense, such as making someone feel the pain of burning by showing them a picture of fire. Next, we have one of the more mysterious members of Gremlin, Sigyn. Sigyn is named after the Norse goddess of the same name, who was the wife of Loki. According to legend, she sat at Loki's side, catching the venom of a snake above Loki, who was chained by the gods for killing Baldur. Baldur's Gate, anyone? Sigyn's status as a magician was even disputed amongst the other members of Gremlin due to her mysterious nature. She accompanied the other members of Gremlin to Baggage City as part of plans to develop a holistic esper and was deemed as Gremlin's secret weapon. Sigyn stayed in communication with Marian during the arc, although it was revealed that Umi Shuri, a ninja participating in the Natural Selector tournament, had already found Sigyn and discovered the weakness of Marian's magic by interrogating Sigyn. Shuri was even able to imitate her voice, leading Marian to question whether she had been speaking to the real Sigyn prior to this. Sigyn then disappears from the story and is never seen again. Her strange ability is to be able to give a 100% accurate suggestion, and therefore make anyone succeed on paper, but she cannot use this ability for herself. She can also provide false suggestions to enemies, leading them onto a path of self-destruction if they follow through with her words. Up next we have, wait, what the hell is that? A cylinder? You're telling me that's Mjolnir? And that it's a girl? Damn, look at those curves. Definitely waifu material. Yes, this is another member of Gremlin, named after Thor's throwing hammer and Master Chief's armor. Mjolnir was not always a cylinder made of stone, as she was once a normal human girl, but was transformed into her current appearance by Marian. It's not specified when exactly she transformed, as she was apparently a cylinder 3 years prior to the story when she was hanging out with Marian and Bersi. Mjolnir had apparently stored up a lot of power, but somehow lost it during World War III, prompting her to join Gremlin. And while she is technically a magician, she could also be classed as a spiritual item due to her capacity to support other magicians in combat. Mjolnir was involved in Gremlin's first attack against Academy City as security on board Radio Son Castle, a flying fortress made in the image of Fiamma's Star of Bethlehem, made for the purpose of locating Kamijo Toma after he went missing in the aftermath of World War III. Mjolnir attempted to crash Radio Son Castle into Academy City, but was stopped by Kanzaki Kaori, with their fight resulting in a third of the castle being destroyed. Mjolnir was thrown off the structure but survived, returning to the rest of Gremlin. She then made a cameo appearance in Hawaii, as Marian sat on her as she punished Cendrillon at the end of the arc. She becomes more involved in his story during the Jihana Ransai, as the forces of Gremlin infiltrated Academy City to capture Fraulein Kreutschun, who they wish to turn into a holistic esper, after the successful experiment in Baggage City. Thor and Marian then began a dispute over what actions to take, as Kikina and Accelerator fought behind the scenes. Thor disagreed with Marian's plan and kicked her, instantly KOing her. Mjolnir attempted to retaliate by attacking Thor, but he convinced her to side with him, as she supports Thor's magic during his fight against the Saint Sylvia, who was part of Olorus's anti-Gremlin group. Mjolnir is later used again, as she was the one storing the volcanic energy amassed from the Hawaii invasion arc in order to create Gungnir. But since this was a decoy plan that was foiled, Mjolnir no longer had any use to Othinus after revealing she had created a lance in secret. After Othinus restored the current phase, Gremlin became aware that Othinus had betrayed them and she did not fulfill their dreams as promised. Mjolnir accompanied Marian again as she attempted to get her revenge on Othinus, as she watched Marian lose in her fight against Toma. After the battle, Mjolnir realizes she entrusted her body to be transmuted by Marian because of their friendship, and didn't see it as unusual. Toma asks Mjolnir if she will fight him too, but she declines and picks up Marian's unconscious body. When Toma asks what Mjolnir plans to do next, he receives no answer. However, Toma did leave his phone number in Marian's pocket, telling Mjolnir to reach out if they need him as they disappeared. And we haven't seen them since. So much for that line of foreshadowing, Kamachi. Despite looking kinda dumb, Mjolnir is very powerful, as she was strong enough to stalemate Kanzaki Kaori, who is a saint, and she can boost Thor's power so that he could become as strong as a saint when he fought Sylvia. Not only does Mjolnir have superhuman strength and speed, she can create magical crossbow and matchlock pistols, which fire projectiles at supersonic speeds. She can also store and unleash large amounts of energy, which can create explosions, and manipulate thunder and lightning. Next is arguably the weirdest member of Gremlin. Yes, that's some achievement when we have just talked about a girl who got turned into a cylinder. Yes, it's time for Freyja. Named after the Norse goddess of fertility, love, and beauty. In Norse mythology, Loki apparently accused her of getting it on with all the gods, including her brother. I mean, that's not too far-fetched for anime girls. Freyja in Toaru isn't actually this pregnant lady on your screen right now. That is Freyja. Yes, Freyja is an evil unborn fetus controlling her mother like a mecha. And this is one of the many reasons why New Testament is on the same level of bizarre as JoJo. 2 years before the start of the story, the mother of Freyja conceives her daughter, who would eventually control her body. The pregnancy was poorly received by those around her, as they did not approve of it, and so Freyja's mother suffered due to the hatred of others, losing her family and home. Despite this, she loved and cared for Freyja, repeating a magical charm to ensure a safe birth. The child was aware of her mother's suffering and somehow used magic from within the womb to protect her, analysing the values of the charm itself and rewriting it. However, Freyja's mother was attacked by a random thug and was injured as a result, but then the fetus inside her took control of her body in order to save them both. Although, this event left her mother's identity fading, with Freyja now permanently in control. Freyja was able to keep her mother alive from the attack through the umbilical cord, and Freyja discovered that if she removed herself from her mother's body, then her mother's organs would then fail. Upon learning of Gremlin and Othinus' plans, Freyja reworked her mother's charm into a unique magic spell, taking on the persona of Freyja, the goddess of fertility, and joining Gremlin in hopes of saving her mother by borrowing Othinus' full power. During the Othinus arc, Freyja is positioned in Tokyo to defend Gremlin's base called Sargasso, located in its bay, and summons a number of creatures from Norse mythology to stop the intruders, alongside the magical Muspel army of flame humanoids. However, she notices that the Muspels are being destroyed by Kamijo Toma and intercepts him on a moving train, heading to the Bay Area. After introducing herself, Toma fights against her summoned creatures, as she nearly has the upper hand at several stages in the fight, and Toma attempts to push ahead to destroy her spiritual item, which summons the monsters. Freyja destroyed several of the train cars, including the one Toma was standing on, causing him to fall, but he is suddenly saved by Misaka Mikoto and Index, who then support him in the fight, with Misaka using multiple railguns on the creatures and Index disrupting Freyja's magic with spell intercept in order to free the mother of Freyja's control, rendering her unconscious. Thank God Toma didn't punch a pregnant lady. His gender equality only goes so far. Toma and the others take the mother to safety, as her body is collected by Bersi and Kamikawa Maria, who take her to hospital. Freyja primarily uses magic via her spiritual item known as a Brisingamen, a necklace which acts on the principles of giving birth to creatures due to her role as the fertility goddess. She manifests jewels of varying colours of the necklace. With her uttering a unique chant, red thread appears and wraps itself around the jewel to form a creature. The summons are immune to pain, but can be destroyed by Toma's Magic Breaker. There does not seem to be a limit on the amount of summons, and Freyja can assign her creatures with commands or allow them to act autonomously. Her summons include Nidogr, the red dragon based upon the serpent from Norse mythology that bites the world tree. Hreisvilgr, a giant eagle that devours the dead according to Norse myth, and Hildisvini, a legendary boar associated with Freyja, which can eat the other summons to grow in size. And here's the list of Freyja's full summons if you're curious. Now we have one of the more interesting members of Gremlin, Kihara Kagun, aka Bersi. The name Bersi is a reference to a character from the 13th century Icelandic epic, the saga of Cormac the Skald. Kagun is notable as he was once an Academy City researcher and teacher belonging to the infamous Kihara family of scientists, but later defected to the magic side, joining Gremlin as he adopted a Norse name. Essentially, Bersi did a reverse of what Alistair did by betraying the science side for magic. While Kagun is a member of the evil Kihara family, he is actually not a bad guy, all things considered, even if he is motivated by revenge and condoned the acts of terrorism committed by Gremlin. Kagun became a near-death experienced researcher in Academy City, and he learned to stop and restart someone's heart without using any supernatural powers. Due to this talent in the field of science, he became a legendary figure amongst the other Kiharas. It wasn't just near-death experiences he became an expert in, as he also became curious about everything related to life and the soul that could be explained by science. However, he decided to quit this field of research as he felt his research and methods devalued human life at a low baseline, since he could make someone live or die as easy as changing the channel on a TV remote. And so he became a school teacher, abandoning his identity as a Kihara, and became a favourite of the young student Kamikawa Maria. Kagun then took the position as a student keeper, a role which helps students who repeatedly skip school to be reintegrated into school life. Notably, Kagun returned 32 students back to school as he gained further recognition in the city. Despite his success as a teacher, Kagun's life would take a turn for the worse, as he could not escape the fact he was a Kihara. 3 years before the start of Index, a boy wielding a knife approached his students with the intent to kill. Kagun immediately noticed and intervened, unleashing his inner Kihara as he killed the boy to protect his students. Kagun was found not guilty of murder before Academy City's court, and was actually allowed to continue as a teacher, but Kagun decided to quit his position regardless. Even though he was viewed as a hero by his students, Kihara Kagun mysteriously vanished. The boy who Kagun killed had been erased from Academy City's databank records by Kagun's fellow family member, Kihara Biori, as she had arranged a killer to attack, as Biori did not approve of Kagun distancing himself from the family and his nature as a Kihara, hoping Kagun would step down as a teacher. While she achieved her goal, Biori must have not anticipated what Kagun would do next. Kagun left Academy City to be away from the Kihara family and to pursue power that he could use to kill Biori. Kagun met Marian Slingeneyer years before Gremlin had even been formed, and witnessed a power system he had no knowledge of prior: magic. Kagun would act as an advisor for Marian, and she didn't have to teach him much about magic, as Kagun was able to refine his manner and cast spells simply by observing her. Then 3 years later, they joined Gremlin together along with Mjolnir, with him adopting the Norse name Bersi. Now Kagun was skilled in magic, he had the capacity to challenge Biori, and Gremlin would act as his platform to lure the Kihara family outside Academy City. Despite Kagun's skill as a magician, he purposefully limited himself so that he could achieve a perfect tie against Biori, due to Kagun not wanting to live anymore, as he hated his identity as a Kihara, and he believed he deserved to die due to killing that boy who was manipulated by Biori. Kagun also prepared an implant device within his body, in case he was controlled by Biori, which would make him try to kill her if he started not acting like himself. Bersi infiltrated Baggage City alongside other members of Gremlin, but instead of working with them to help develop a holistic Esper as planned, he had other ideas. Bersi followed through with his own personal goal of getting revenge on Biori, and had intercepted Academy City's plans that the Kihara family would be deployed to deal with the Science Guardians and Gremlin. Bersi chose to wear a helmet to hide his identity from the members of the Kihara family, who had no idea about his current whereabouts after vanishing 3 years ago. While Biori was his primary target, Bersi still found time to help others in Baggage City, who were impacted by the ongoing conflict, as he saved a Science Guardian member from a 5-over, a machine that could replicate Misaka Mikoto's railgun. He then supported Umi Shuri against Kihara Enshu, a younger member of the Kihara family, who thought the helmeted man may be in fact Kagun. After Enshu escaped, Bersi recommended that Shuri should find Toma if she wished to survive, as he's not capable to continue to help her due to his nature as a Kihara. Bersi then faces off against Biori, as he protects Kamikawa Maria, Salfi Open Days, and Shuri, with his helmet being destroyed, revealing his identity to everyone, and stating he had used Enshu's presence as bait to lure Biori. He had also waited until her safety devices had been destroyed, such as her wheelchair and its modifications, and her dark matter legs. Kagun then fought against Biori, who transformed herself into various creatures using a modified version of Kakina's dark matter. Bersi fought as they reached a stalemate, saying he would get revenge on Biori for turning an innocent boy into a killer. As the two of them perished in their final battle. Maria, who was Kagun's former student, was distraught at watching Kagun die with a satisfied look on his face. As Marian also saw that Bersi had fallen, she couldn't accept the reality before her. Bersi, however, was revived by Othinus, turning him into an Einherjar, acting akin to a zombie with almost no way of expressing himself. Bersi then supports Othinus' plans to create Gungnir at Sargasso, managing a parallel processor being used on the remains of Kakina Teitoku, using his dark matter as a substitute for a holistic Esper. After the process was completed, Othinus ordered Bersi to head to Tokyo in order to distract Gremlin's enemies, delaying them until Gungnir was completed. But things did not go as Othinus expected, since Bersi came across Toma and Maria under attack from Freyja's Red Dragon. Despite the dragon being on Bersi's side and Toma's group technically being his enemies, the Einherjar Bersi defended them from the dragon. This was again due to the implants that Bersi had secretly had inside him, which would control his body to act like himself, meaning he would protect Maria even if he was a mindless zombie at this point. Bersi then accompanied Maria as they took Freyja's body to safety, and it's implied Bersi was finally laid to rest for good after the end of the Othinus arc. Bersi's magic utilizes the Sword of Witting, which is kinda like a lightsaber. Every time Bersi receives a fatal blow, the sword's power increases, as well as its range. And Bersi is also immune to all fatal attacks at the same time. Next up, we have Marian Slingeneyer, one of the most important members of Gremlin. I've covered bits of her backstory when talking about Bersi, but here's everything new. Marian is a female Dverga, or Dark Dwarf from Norse mythology, and is an expert at crafting weapons, amongst other things, with her role as a blacksmith. When Marian met Kagun 3 years before the start of Index, she hoped to improve the tools of the dwarves via modernization, akin to the Industrial Revolution. Since her techniques were on the verge of extinction, this may be due to Marian being one of the few practicing Dvergas that are still alive in the Aeon of Horus, as she wishes to revive her race and their techniques. As Kagun was a genius from the science side, he was the ideal partner for Marian. Marian joined Gremlin alongside Kagun and Mjolnir, with Marian wanting Othinus to revive the Dvergas once she restored her full power to warp reality without consequence. Marian was heavily involved in Gremlin's main plans, due to her role as a blacksmith. It would be her responsibility to forge Gungnir for Othinus. But again, she had no idea that Othinus was creating the lance herself in secret without any outside help. Therefore, Marian was intended as the head of the decoy plan, with all her efforts being in vain in the end. Marian was present at the end of the Hawaii invasion arc, with Mjolnir successfully absorbing the volcanic energy for the decoy plan, and Marian punishing Cendrillon, revealing that she was just a pawn and turning her into a table. Marian then leads the Gremlin forces with their assault on Baggage City in Othinus' absence, and aims to prepare the conditions to begin an experiment based upon a holistic Esper. Marian was instructed to protect the heating facilities located in the garbage disposal facility of Baggage City, where the experiment would take place. The area had been protected by a magic barrier set up by Gremlin, but the newfound presence of the Kiharas and the rest of Academy City's forces had damaged the building, which caused the barrier to cease functioning. Marian was attacked by Kihara Biori and Academy City troops, but Marian easily dealt with the soldiers and damaged Biori's wheelchair, and forces her into the garbage disposal pit. She was now aware that Gremlin had to face much more than just the Science Guardians. Marian heads to her room to devise a countermeasure to the rest of the invading Academy City forces. She uses a spiritual item known as Loki's Net against Academy City aircraft and 5 over-railgun machines. She then contacts who she believes is Sigyn, who is lost, and gives her directions, but is then confronted by Shuri and Maria. While Marian knocks out Maria, she is injured during her fight and attempts to flee with Shuri in pursuit. While she manages to escape, Marian briefly meets up with Bersi before witnessing his death as he succeeded in killing his arch enemy Biori. Marian completely loses it as she becomes willing to use the spiritual item sword known as Dainsleth, the strongest weapon in Marian's arsenal. Othinus actually forbade Marian from using it due to it having the capacity to potentially destroy the world when completely unsheathed. While Marian doesn't completely release the full power of the sword, she uses it to defeat Selphie Open Days and Shuri, and just when Marian is about to kill Maria, Kamijo Toma appears to save the day, with his presence causing something invisible to be destroyed, suggesting that Gremlin's experiment to create the conditions to develop a holistic Esper was successful. Marian witnesses this and mistakenly believes Toma has ruined the experiment, therefore making her and Bersi's efforts all in vain. Marian tries to kill Toma with Dainsleif, but is ultimately defeated via a classic punch to the face. Othinus then shows up and destroys Dainsleif because it's way too dangerous to keep around, as it's the only major threat to her own power as a magic god within Gremlin. Marian is later woken up from being unconscious at the end of the arc by Othinus, who reveals they will now target Academy City, specifically the mysterious woman known as Fraulein Kreutschun, imprisoned in the windowless building, who Othinus believes is the ideal candidate to be turned into a holistic Esper. Marian works with Thor during the Ichihana Ransai arc, until he knocks her out unconscious over disagreeing over which action to take next, with Thor preferring to wait until the unexpected threat of Accelerator and Kakina reveal themselves before taking action, while Marian wanted to move immediately. Gremlin fails to capture Kreutschun, and Marian is reunited with Thor. Wait, that's not Thor, that's Olorus in disguise! Yep, Thor has gone away since he doesn't really care about Gremlin's plans, but more on him very soon. Olorus wants to sneak into Gremlin's HQ, so he will have the perfect opportunity to counter Othinus when the time comes. Marian seemingly forgives not Thor for kicking her earlier, as Othinus appears saying there is now a change of plans, with Gremlin using Kakina's remains as a substitute for Fraulein as they leave Academy City for Sargasso. Marian assists Othinus with attempting to forge Gungnir, with Marian being the one who is managing the entire ritual. Before the lance is created, Olorus reveals himself and causes an explosion of light from Mjolnir, which hit Marian, who was stood in her proximity, with Olorus commenting that it wasn't likely enough to kill Marian. After the world was restored, Marian attempts to get her revenge on Othinus for manipulating her and the other members of Gremlin, in addition to not making their individual dreams come true once her full power returned. Marian and Mjolnir confronted Toma and Othinus in Denmark, with Othinus slowly dying from the fairy spell and refusing to use magic. Marian fully unsheaths Dainsleif to be used against Toma, as she had recreated the sword and summoned versions of different gods and legendary creatures from other phases in her attempt to get revenge. But Marian loses yet again to Toma as he saves her from getting hit by her own summoned monster. Toma then destroys Dainsleif with a magic breaker, as he gives his phone number to Marian and Mjolnir in case they need his help in the future. Marian wields a variety of golden spiritual items, all with different powers, but her primary magic is that of human modification, being able to modify and transform bodies in whatever way she wishes, via physical contact with her golden tools. But she cannot modify cells which are completely dead. This magic can be used to kill her enemies instantly in a gruesome fashion, or it can be used as a way to heal instead. Marian can also apparently use an invisibility spell. Let's go over the different spiritual items that Marian has in her possession. First is Loki's net, which I mentioned earlier. It's a trap made of metal wires, which homes onto targets, matching their speed, trapping and cutting them if it hits, with the net also being able to operate remotely. Next is her Draupnir, large golden rings which circle around Marian's wrists. Marian created these spiritual items from the remnants of the abandoned incomplete Gungnir she was tasked with producing during the Othinus arc. These rings allow her to create any magic sword or divine spear on a level that humans can use, allowing Marian to recreate Dainsleif. Dainsleif is an incredibly strong spiritual item, with the scabbard and the sword itself having a variety of different powers, but it only reaches its maximum potency when the sword is fully unsheathed from the scabbard. It can be used to induce fear upon others and even stop their hearts from beating, although Toma can resist this due to his Imagine Breaker. The scabbard can manipulate gravity by absorbing it into a ball and causing it to explode, but as this explosion is created via natural means, as opposed to being induced by magic, Imagine Breaker cannot negate it. The sword can also control light and shockwaves when raised. When fully unsheathed, the sword can summon gods and creatures from a variety of different mythologies by cutting through phases or layers of reality overlapping the universe, thus bringing them to the current phase. Some of these beings include the Titans from Greek mythology, Ocelot from Aztec mythology, Sortra from Norse mythology, Abaddon, a demon from the Bible, Yomotsu Shikome from Shintoism, and Vishnu Avatara from Hinduism. Next up is femboy Chris Hemsworth. I mean Thor, who again isn't the actual god Thor, he's just using his name for Thor-related spells. As you probably know from popular culture, Thor is the god of lightning and thunder, but also agriculture. But you may be thinking, why does Thor, the uber-masculine Giga-Chan Norse god, look like a chick in Index? Well, Thor apparently disguised himself as a girl once in Norse mythology, so I suppose he had to be sort of convincing, right? Come on, Thor! This is like the bearded lady from Eurovision. Thor is one of the strongest members of Gremlin, and is pretty much a free spirit. Deep down, he really doesn't care about Gremlin's plans. He basically does whatever the hell he wants, to the point of disobeying orders and betraying other members of the Cabal numerous times. But why does he do this? What Thor values most is fighting worthy opponents. He gets a thrill out of a good challenge, but doesn't like to involve bystanders or cause too much collateral damage. Thor joined Gremlin in the hopes of finding worthy opponents to fight, and hoped Othinus would provide such opportunities for him, with her power as a magic god. But Thor became disillusioned with the hierarchy and operations of Gremlin, just doing things for his own selfish appetite for combat. Othinus likely left Thor out of the loop for multiple of Gremlin's plans due to his chaotic attitude, and simply used him as a pawn due to his skill and power, even if he is somewhat unpredictable. Thor debuts in the Ichihana Ransai arc and immediately takes matters into his own hands by making a deal with Olorus, Othinus' arch enemy. Yeah, Thor really gives zero fucks, doesn't he? Olorus requests that he borrows Thor's appearance so he can successfully infiltrate Gremlin at the end of the arc. And Thor's probably like, that sounds kinda funny, sure thing. Thor continues to be the most unserious member of Gremlin as he shapeshifts into Misaka Mikoto and tricks Toma into thinking it's actually her. After revealing his true identity and attacking with an arc fusion blade, Thor is impressed at how Toma was able to dodge it. Toma retaliates by grabbing Thor and questions who the hell he is. Thor then proceeds to tell Toma about Gremlin's plans to free Fraulein Koichun, and that Olorus' group will also be fighting Gremlin to stop them from capturing her. And it is inevitable that a big conflict will occur in Academy City, as Thor dislikes battles where innocents could be harmed. Thor suggests Toma and him free Fraulein before Gremlin does it so that they can take her away without the two major groups causing mass destruction. But in order to do this, they would have to pierce through Alistair's fortress, the Windowless building, which is almost indestructible. Since Thor is a member of Gremlin and Toma doesn't exactly know Thor all that well, he doesn't trust him, which prompts Thor to attack Toma, with Thor suggesting that saving someone should be more than enough of a reason for Toma to side with him. After trading blows with each other, Toma compromises and swears he will absolutely destroy Thor if this is all just a setup. Toma and Thor meet at the rendezvous point and head to one of the former bases of the freshman Darkseid group, using information given to Gremlin by Bersi. They then stole power tools which might be able to produce a shockwave capable of damaging the building and bypassing the Calculate Fortress, which is the material that is used to prevent it from being harmed. While the twos initially work as they pierce the building, the jackhammer breaks and Academy City's security aircraft, known as the Four Wings, arrive to neutralize the two vandals. However, part of the Windowless building was destroyed from the inside as Koichun suddenly emerges into the open and destroys the aircraft by herself and escapes away into the city. Thor and Toma observe as Anti-Skill attempts to stop Koichun. Thor notes that Gremlin and Olorus' group haven't acted yet and must do something to keep them away from their target. Toma suggests they can trick both groups by spreading false information, making them think it's a trap and keeping them away from Koichun. Thor agrees to the plan as they disguise themselves as firefighters to escape Anti-Skill's perimeter and discuss how neither of them knows the whereabouts of Gremlin or Olorus' group. Toma plans to pit Gremlin and Olorus against each other, drawing their attention with fake attacks in the city. Thor then contacts Marian to meet with him in order to distract her from capturing Kroichun. However, Marian discovers a poster with her being a wanted intruder in Academy City and alerts Thor while fleeing. As Terma and Thor help prepare these fake posters, with Thor shapeshifting to impersonate Marian for the photo. The two then separate to do their own things, as Thor kicks Marian, as I've already covered, and then proceeds to team up with Misaka by fighting the Saint Sylvia while his power was boosted by Mjolnir. After Terma's fight with Birdway, Thor informs Terma there has now been a change of plans, as Gremlin no longer wishes to target Kroichun, and Academy City is also no longer interested in chasing her. Nevertheless, Thor still wants a final scrap with Terma, as Thor shoots himself with a gun in order to make it fair. He's so goddamn unhinged, it's hilarious. The two of them pretty much reach a stalemate, as Thor is satisfied and then disappears to do his own thing, while Olorus impersonates him with Gremlin. It wasn't until after Othinus destroyed the world and it was restored that the real Thor reappeared in Denmark, in front of the many former members of Gremlin who had amassed to get revenge on Othinus. And he pretty much beat all of them single-handedly, thanks to his OP as hell almighty spell. Of course, Thor couldn't resist going a third round against Terma, who was trying to save Othinus' life. Thor had no interest in getting revenge on Othinus like the others. He was just there for the vibes. Terma couldn't even land a single finger on Thor while his ass was being kicked. But somehow, Terma managed to trick Thor's almighty power into putting him right next to a train, which hurt Thor badly and earned Terma the win in the most ass-pull way possible. Thor was still alive and gave Terma the thumbs up to continue forward. Thor is not only a very strong magician, but he is also a skilled martial artist, which means he is a physical match for Kamijo Terma. Thor's main magic is his arc fusion blades, which extend from his fingers and can cut almost anything they touch. Thor's power can also be boosted when connected to Mjolnir, which increases the range and potency of the blades, putting him on the same level as a saint. In this form, he is referred to as Lightning God Thor. Thor also uses a spiritual item known as Meninjord, which is his belt that gives him superhuman strength. Additionally, he can shapeshift, but with one limitation: he can only turn into chicks. I'm sure many guys wish they had that superpower. He can also use Tanijnir and Tanijroz's fur, which are the two goats which pull Thor's chariot. And he can also use this to form a raft for traveling on water. He can also detect invisible opponents, and it's implied he has some degree of regeneration or healing magic. Last but not least is his almighty Thor ability, which is a form of pseudo-teleportation that is really OP. Almighty Thor is a passive ability that works automatically while it's active, and it moves the entire goddamn planet to position Thor in a place where he is most likely to win against his opponents, giving the illusion that he is teleporting. Due to his condition to place himself in the best spot possible, apparently he can counter Accelerator's reflection. I guess in a similar method to Kihara counter, Thor is pretty much untouchable with the Almighty, since if you try to move or hit him, he will automatically be in a different position where he is most likely to win, such as directly behind you. The Almighty does have a weakness, of course, as it does not work on anything that Thor doesn't deem as a target, such as outside factors. Really? He got beat by a goddamn train, come on! Last but certainly not least, we have the one-eyed Othinus, the leader of Gremlin and the magic god. Othinus is the Latin name of Odin, and she basically inspired all of the legends about Odin himself in the current phase or reality of the world, which Index's story takes place, as Othinus is originally from an entirely different reality from our own, and older than numbers can count, due to the passage of time she spent warping time and space being unquantifiable. While she was originally a human, she became a god by mastering Norse magic, and had to sacrifice her human body in order to be reborn as a magic god. This involved a ritualistic sacrifice where Othinus gouged out her right eye and threw it into Mimir's spring in Denmark, and then proceeded to hang herself from a tree in order to reach unthinkable power. As a magic god, Othinus could freely warp reality to her will by creating new layers of reality which overlap the physical universe, which basically act as parallel dimensions in their own right. These layers are known as the phases, which can infinitely stack upon each other across the universe, like different layers of paint on a blank canvas. Even though she was a god, Othinus was not truly omnipotent or omniscient, as due to her tampering of the universe too much by creating many phases, over time she forgot what her original world was like. Her attempts to restore it were futile, as they were merely fake copies of it, and not the actual reality she was originally from, which caused Othinus to loathe herself, and the godlike power she possessed. Therefore, she relinquished her power as a full magic god, although in the modern era, she would reclaim her title as a Norse magic god, stealing the opportunity away from her rival Olorus, who then formed a grudge against her. But due to previously taking away her full power, she was only able to recover half of it, and therefore would need to construct a powerful spiritual item to compensate for the other 50%. That would be the legendary Lance of Gungnir. After biding her time, Othinus saw that World War III had thrown the science and magic sides into disarray, with magic now being more commonly known across the world, and both sides being more vulnerable in this time of peace. Therefore, she formed the magic cabal known as Gremlin, where she would promise to fulfill the individual dreams of her members once she restored her full power. Gremlin would also use knowledge and personnel from the science side, as the science side had now more power in the world with the decline of the Roman Catholic Church's authority after the dissolution of God's right seat. Therefore, by having Kihara Kagun from the science side, it would provide them more knowledge about their main enemy and see if they could devise any scientific methods to help create the Lance of Gungnir, such as holistic espers. Othinus, however, had no intention of making the dreams of her members come true, as they were all simply means for her to distract their enemies with a complex plan, to cover up the fact she was creating Gungnir in secret by herself, as Othinus is a god of both war and deception, tricking both her allies and foes, similar to Fuyama of the right. Othinus also wanted Imagine Breaker from Kamijo Toma, due to its ability to restore previous phases of reality, meaning it had the power to bring back her original world. But deep inside, Othinus wanted someone who truly understood her, as no one could relate to her pain of not being able to restore her world, and the suffering she faced from the many phases she created. Othinus first appeared at the end of the Baggage City arc, as she crushed Toma's invisible thing and had a stalemate with Olorus before retreating with Marian. She was also in the background of the Ichihana Ransai arc, and even punished Olorus, who was the imposter Thor, by tearing his arm off. Join the club, Olorus! It wasn't until her own arc where she finally took the spotlight. Surprise, surprise. After creating Gungnir in secret, and Olorus's anti-gremlin squad believing her plan was foiled, she was hit by the fairy spell, which would have turned her into a fairy and nullified her reality warping powers. But since she could simply do the opposite of what she intended to do, it basically acted like she had 100% of her power. Nice job, Fuyama and Olorus. So, Othinus pretty much destroyed the entire world. Or at least that's how it appeared. She added a new phase or layer of reality, which spans the entire universe, overlapping the previous one, with this new phase being a black void, with nothing in it other than her and Toma, as she planned to break Toma down mentally in order for him to surrender Imagine Breaker, as if she truly killed him for good, Imagine Breaker would just respawn in a random place where she wouldn't be able to track it down. But honestly, this was all just an excuse to expose Toma to a lot of horrendous shit, as Othinus wanted him to know what she experienced back when she first became a god, as the other members of Gremlin didn't fully understand her, which is why she was willing to manipulate them as her pawns. Othinus is really a narcissist, huh? Anyway, after making Toma go through an identity crisis, exposing him to billions of hells that destroyed his body and mind, and then coercing him to suicide, Othinus was surprised to see that Toma had returned to challenge her, a lowly human versus an all-powerful god, with Toma making the selfish choice to restore his own world, even if it meant destroying the paradise Othinus had created, where everyone on Earth was happy except for him. Toma fought valiantly against Othinus, like he was facing a Dark Souls final boss, dying repeatedly with Othinus reviving him, while gaining much valuable XP points to notice her attack patterns, with him finally destroying Gungnir with a Magic Breaker. But after over 10,000 deaths, Toma was in touching distance of punching Othinus. Humanity was about to overcome God. But Othinus cheated, firing a planet-destroying crossbow bolt through her own body to obliterate Toma's lower half. Just like Freyja, eh? With Othinus being able to regenerate herself instantly, Othinus finally had enough of Toma's efforts. Toma stated that Othinus should use a Magic Breaker to bring back her own world, as he died satisfied despite everything. But Toma's words affected Othinus, and she realized that he understood her better than anyone else, as she chose not to bring back her world, but to restore Toma's phase. Toma then stood on Sargasso beside Othinus, protecting her, as he swore to fight against the entire world to save her. As now that Othinus had lost Gungnir, she was slowly dying from the fairy spell that had struck her prior to changing the phases, and if she used magic, it would accelerate the progress of her demise. Therefore, in order to save Othinus, she would need to turn back into a normal human and revoke her status as a god by retrieving her right eye from Mimir's spring, located in Eggerskov Castle in Denmark. The two of them used their bone boat to travel there, as Toma faced a boss rush from multiple opponents. See my New Testament 10 summary video if you want more details, as this video is already way too long as it is. After Toma got his ass beat multiple times, they finally arrived at a destination, to which Othinus is like, nah, I don't deserve to be saved, and uses magic to stop Toma from trying to help her. Toma still manages to beat Othinus this time, but her body vanishes into thin air. But she's not dead, as it's implied the other magic gods, who are actually part of the group known as True Gremlin, intervene to save her, and that the Magic Breaker also nullified the fairy spell in that moment where Toma touched her, causing her to turn into a fairy like how the spell should have worked. Toma is reunited with Othinus in the hospital, who is now 15 centimeters tall, and she's pretty much lost all her power, but still possesses her great knowledge of the magic side, and advises Toma in multiple fights as his sidekick in the latter half of New Testament and in Genesis Testament. Basically Puck from Berserk, but way less annoying. Othinus is by far the strongest member of Gremlin, with her reality warping magic. Her abilities are quite numerous, so I recommend you watch this video I already made on her, which is a far better breakdown than I'd be able to manage right now. My god, that took way too long. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more Toaru explained videos, check out these ones on screen right now for more content. Until next time.